Couple of injuries hampered the Lightning in a 2-1 loss on the road to Edmonton. How difficult are these injuries going to be for Tampa, and who needs to step up the most for the Lightning?
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Josh Sperber here, thanking all of you for making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if your team is the Tampa Bay Lightning, then this is the show for you. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. And let us get started here talking about last night's game. A 2-1 defeat for the Lightning in Edmonton. Each goalie had over 20 saves, with 23 stops for Vasilevsky and 21 for Skinner. It was a Jake Guentzel goal off of a Nikita Kucherov assist that tied things up in the second period for the Lightning. Goal in the first and second for the Oilers that got them out in front. Kucherov and Point combined for Guentzel's goal. And for the Oilers, Draisaitl was credited with a goal and an assist. Connor McDavid got the opening goal. And the Oilers also had one from Ekholm called back as well. So it was a game that I wouldn't say was dominated, but was definitely controlled by the Edmonton Oilers. The Lightning were better in face-off percentage. Neither team scored on the power play. And Lightning also out-hit their opponent, but it was the Oilers who had the most shots blocked as well. But it was still a pretty even game. I think the Lightning played some solid defense. I honestly expected losing Cernak to have a little bigger an effect than it did, but the Lightning showed that their defenders are strong. They've got, I think, a really tight unit with the 6-7 that they usually do play. Steven Santini was recalled from the AHL Syracuse Crunch. He did not play, and that's something that we'll talk about a little bit later on, but I think there was reason that he didn't play. That second goal for the Oilers was just a fluke. It was just one of those almost freak accidents as Vasilevsky was trying to sweep it away, and it just knocked off of something and went back into the net. Just a really tough way to give up that second goal for the Lightning. And the first goal was just, some Connor McDavid doing Connor McDavid things. I really, you really don't want to give the defenders the blame for a loss like that. I mean, it was just one of those, or just a tough moment on that last goal. But really, aside from that, it was a pretty evenly played game. It definitely wasn't one of those losses where the Lightning were just flat out dominated. They were very much in this game. And it just didn't work out in their favor. I think the Lightning did what they could do on offense. I mean, you want to see more shots against a group of goalies that, have struggled at times this season. But the Oilers were able to just defend well, and they stopped the Lightning from getting too many chances. But, you're not going to stop that Lightning first line from much. That they just have too many playmakers on that first line due to the Lightning for them to really be anything except for slow down sometimes. And I mean, you can call this a slow game for the Lightning offense with just one goal, but even in that, you have the entire first line combining on a goal. And I think, that opening goal for Edmonton might have been the only one from both teams that didn't have anything to do with the opposing team's mistake. the Lightning picked up a puck in their offensive zone and turned it into the game-tying goal on a beautiful pass from Kucherov and a snipe of the corner from Jake Gensel. This was a game that was just incredibly evenly played and probably for both teams among their best defensive showing in 2024. Defense was just really solid last night for both sides, and I think it was definitely the main reason that this game was so low scoring. It was a well-played game. You didn't see a lot of just useless penalties. It was just, it was just a good, solid hockey game, and it ended up that the Oilers just kind of came out on top. That was it. It wasn't a game where you could tell that there was one team that dominated from the beginning. No, it was a really even back and forth game. And I don't want to say that it was a lucky break that gave Edmonton the win, but it was just kind of one of those things that, something went their way. The Oilers caught a break at the right time and the Lightning couldn't recover. That really decided it. And sometimes games are going to happen like that. But I think, for the Lightning, you're going to want to outshoot your opponent, especially in that second period. 11-7 in shots in favor of Edmonton. Both the other two periods were decided by 2 shots or fewer. And again, this is something that I feel like we keep coming back to. It's the offense has to light the fire for the Tampa Bay Lightning. That is the identity of this team. The defense might have played well last night, but the offense is clearly the strength of this team. This Lightning team is going to be able to score with anyone. They should be able to go toe for toe shot wise with any team in the league. And for the most part this season on games that they haven't, it's been a game that they lost. And, it's a tough pill to swallow, especially in a game like this where you're going against a contending team. You're going against a team that was, in a lot of people's minds, a preseason favorite to get back to the Stanley Cup Finals and maybe even win it. I mean, this is a battle between one of the best teams in the league, or two of the best teams in the league. In some ways, two teams that are, in playoff contention right now. But the Lightning took on a contender and they stayed with Edmonton every bit of the way. It just looked like that mistake in the second period that led to that second goal. I mean, that was really just what undid the Lightning. I mean, a tough way to lose for sure, but I think it shows some bright spots. It shows that the Lightning can really clamp down on defense, because defensively, this was a really solid game for Tampa, even without Erik Cernak, who I think just from a pure defending standpoint might have been the best Lightning defender so far this season. I mean, he's been so solid, and not having him in this game, and for the Lightning to still hold the Oilers to 25 shots, to just to just do that well defensively without one of your key players, with guys, the second and third lines kind of changed around a little bit. It's not easy to do. And the Lightning really, did not show any ill effects of not having Erik Cernak on defense. I think, the same might not be able to be said for the offensive side of things. I think they certainly missed Anthony Cirelli as well, and the the impact that Cernak has clearing the puck. I think those were definitely missed, and hopefully, with those two guys both listed as day-to-day, hopefully they'll just get back sooner, so the Lightning will be able to rebound quicker, because it is definitely it's definitely something that the Lightning had an issue with. Just, they couldn't hold off the attack in the key moments, but, I don't think that it was because they didn't have Cernak. I think that certainly had an effect, but it was just, one of those games where things didn't break the Lightning's way, and that caused the loss. And Tampa will get another chance at Edmonton. This was the first of 2 meetings, with the next being in Tampa Bay on the 25th of February. And, obviously plenty can change before that time, but the Lightning hopefully will get a bounce back opportunity against the Edmonton Oilers. Their next game opportunity is against the Calgary Flames, and we might see one of the newest members of the Tampa Bay Lightning, Steven Santini. We're going to talk about some of the AHL depth and why this time was the choice the Lightning called up their first defenseman from the AHL this season. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. So never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and America's #1 sportsbook. Josh Sperber here, and before the game against the Oilers, the Lightning went down to the AHL and called up Steven Santini, who signed a two-way contract with the Lightning at the beginning of July after a few years with the Devils, where he started his NHL career in 2015. He was the second-round pick by New Jersey out of Bronxville, New York in 2013, 5 goals, 18 assists, and a career plus-minus of -8 in 123 career games. Santini last played in the NHL with the Blues in 2023, where he played a total of 9 games for the Predators and Blues since he left the Devils in 2019. He has been bouncing around the AHL ever since, after leaving the Devils in the PK Subban deal back in June of 2019. Was in the AHL for St. Louis and the LA Kings over the last 4 seasons, and now he is here with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And honestly, I was surprised when I saw Santini got called up. 2 goals, 3 assists in 14 games with the Syracuse Crunch. I really thought that the first defenseman that the Lightning called up would have been Derek Pouliot. He has been a force for the Crunch, and as a defenseman is leading the team in assists and points with 15 assists, 6 more than currently inactive the rookie Nico Huhtinen, who has 9, tied with Gabriel Sturck for the team lead. And the 5 goals for Pouliot are third on the team. The plus or minus for Pouliot is 6. That is 6 on the team. He has just been so strong, limiting the penalty minutes as well with 16 over the 22 games. 4 of his goals are on the power play. I mean, it just seemed like a no-brainer that Pouliot would be the first defender called up. But Santini, a bit younger at 29 years old, I think the age there might have had a factor. You just don't know at 33, how big an impact that Pouliot can still make in the NHL. I mean, in the AHL, he's mostly playing against rookies and guys who don't have as much experience. And this is a guy who has had a lot of experience in the NHL, but Santini is someone who I think the Lightning still believe that they can get something out of. And I think for this case, I think if there were more at stake, Pouliot with more NHL experience might have been a guy who got called up. I think, closer to the playoffs, if we see a similar injury to this, when standings are really starting to take shape and mean a lot more than they do at this point of the season, yeah, we might see a guy like Pouliot get called up. But I think Santini getting the call is a smart move, I think, for the Lightning, because it's a guy who's still relatively young. He still thinks he has something to prove in the NHL, and I believe that he absolutely does. But, this is still a guy who has over 100 games of NHL experience. He's played in different teams. He's played in different leagues. And, 6'3", 214, he's got good size. I mean, he's still someone that the Lightning feel can make an impact in a kind of reserve role. And I think, bringing Pulio up for the Lightning, you'd want to have him just in a line. Like that would, I think, replace maybe a Perbix or a Radish in that way. And I think Santini is someone who might be a little bit more malleable and just, not a guy who just needs to be just put on a line and gone out there. I think that, it just adds a little bit of extra depth and a good sized guy who, he's still been solid for the crunch, still has, a lot of experience at this level, but I think it seems to me that this sends a message that Cernak is not going to be out for that long. He's his lower body injury. Both of them, there was, for both Cernak and Cirelli, there was a shot they could have played. It just was doubtful pretty much the whole way. So, yeah, I think this was the right call, though. I think it's bringing up it's good to just bring up some more defensemen, I believe, and just change the way that the Lightning make their changes, staying with that the 12 and 6 for the most part, and they still have some younger guys, some rookies, some draft picks that can come up. I think Jesse Alonen is someone who I'd like to see back up in the NHL at some point. Dylan Duke has had a fantastic start to the year so far for Syracuse, 17 points, or second most, tied with Nico Huhtinen. Gabriel Sturck, another option. I mean, offensively, the Lightning, I think, have more options to bring up than on defense, but they went with one of the experienced guys. And I think Dylan Gill is a defender that the Lightning will be thinking about. Toby Paquet-Bisson, someone who might come back up. Declan Carlisle, Tyson Feist once he gets healthy. The Lightning have guys on defense, but I think it's defensively in the AHL where they have their most experienced players. And, you want to bring a guy who has had some NHL experience, especially if you're calling him up on the road, because, coming back to the NHL, getting your first taste of NHL hockey this season, and like it is for Santini, his first case in a couple of years. He hasn't played in the NHL in 2 seasons. He had 1 assist in 4 games with the Blues back in 2022 through 23 in that season, and that's been it. Since then, it's been just purely the AHL for him. And yeah, it might be a little bit easier for him to get his sea legs underneath him and him to get back used to the pace of play in the NHL than it would have been for one of the rookies, one of the younger guys, especially on the road. I think it's definitely not as easy to come to a new team, to, rejoin some players that you don't know as well, but are still your team. I think that adjustment is definitely easier at home. But calling up a guy like Santini, who's been up and down from the AHL the past couple of years, who has been around, who has moved to different teams, who has kind of seen the grind of an NHL career and the toll that it can take on a veteran player who's moved around a bit. And, it's bringing a guy who's kind of steeled to it a little bit into a tough environment on the road right out of the gate. So I like the idea of the Lightning bringing in some experience. We'll see if he ends up playing against Calgary tomorrow. But the one message that Santini's call-up does send is that Cernak's injury might be a little bit more serious than we hope. When you call up a player to, replace a guy, it's one thing I think with forwards, there's a bit more wiggle room in terms of putting guys in different lines and different places. And defenders, it's 2 guys. You got a guy who plays on the left, you got a guy who plays on the right. And the Lightning needed to replace one of those guys, and they did that. And, I don't think they could have stayed. They could have stayed with their 6, but they like having those 7-8 defenders on the roster. But hopefully it doesn't mean that Cernak's injury is more serious than they would have thought. He's definitely someone that I'd like to see back, but I think with the strength and the depth the Lightning have and the experience they have in Santini and Pulio in Syracuse, I think it certainly helps them, bolster their defense if they have another one of these break glass in case of injury emergency kind of moments. But I think I think Santini could certainly help the Lightning. And we'll see if he plays against Calgary tomorrow. But we will have, of course, another Lightning game. You obviously saw some of the effects that the Lightning had losing Anthony Cirelli and Erik Cernak to injury. Now, which players are going to be under the most pressure from those Lightning injuries? Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any other of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action. Here's why you need to get started today. Firstly, because you can win 100 up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks, up to 200 times what you bet. And if you once you play your first $5 lineup, you get $50 instantly. No need to win. The $50 is guaranteed when you play your first $5 lineup on Prize Picks. And Prize Picks also offers some fun weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, where select player projections are discounted up to 25%. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly after you download the Prize Picks app. Spell out the code LOCKEDONNHL, and that will get you $50. Prize Picks, run your game. Back here on Locked On Lightning, and we talked about some of the injuries did necessitate the addition of Steven Santini. They're getting his first call up to the Lightning and the potential for him to enter his first NHL game since 2003. Now, Lightning have played with some injuries before. 2 second liners at the same time, though, is obviously harder to deal with. The Lightning did play a game against Edmonton with these guys, and I think we're going to go through who is going to be under the most pressure from injuries. And with the defender called up, we talked about Steven Santini coming up to replace Erik Cernak. I think we've got a defender and an offensive player on both of these lists, on these lists for who needs to step up the most. So to replace Cernak, I think my vote is going to be on Darren Radish. Radish is usually the guy who, when there's been an injury, when there's been some changes on defense, he has been the guy who has moved lines. He has been the extra defender on those 11-7 line days. And, it's been Radish who has been the guy just moving around. And I think that, his role might be changed the most from Cernak coming out. And, he's usually the guy who is that extra defender, that seventh guy, the kind of offensive forward that the Lightning use on their 11-7 lines. And so I think that's definitely the main reason that I think he'd be the most affected by Erik Cernak's unfortunate injury. And yesterday the Lightning went with their 12-6. They moved their lines up a little bit. Moser and McDonough. Radish went with Hedman. Lilleberg went with Nick Perbix. And you already saw, I think, the main reason why I'm talking about Radish here. When the Lightning change lines, it's usually Radish who is changing up who he plays with on defense. This time it was him going all the way up to the first line with Victor Hedman. Usually it's him being the seventh defender, but that third line, Perbix and Lilleberg, has stayed the same. And, because it's going to be Radish moving around the lines, because it's going to be Radish changing his roles, I think he's the guy who is going to have to step up the most. So that, I think defensively, Radish is the guy who I have my eyes on most closely when it comes to Lightning players. And offensively, I think there's a pretty easy answer as well. Anthony Cirelli, of course, is the man injured, did not play last night, listed as day-to-day. The Lightning with enough forward depth now, fortunately, with some other players getting back from injuries, that Anthony Cirelli is still is not going to be replaced at this moment by someone from the AHL. Right now, the Lightning are going to use just the guys they have on their roster. And I don't see a problem with that. I think the Lightning definitely have enough forward depth in the NHL, but you still have to have guys that step up. For me, that's Brandon Hagel. And you look at the way Hagel's played this season, saying that he needs to step up really at all seems kind of irresponsible. He's just been that good for Tampa this season. And if Nikita Kucherov didn't exist, he'd be the best offensive player in the Lightning right now. Third on the team in assists. He's up there in goals, tied now just under Jake Gensel. He is fourth on the team in goals. Hagel has been everything the Lightning have needed on the offensive side of the ice this season. Defensively, he's helped out as well. Him and Cirelli have made up one of the league's strongest penalty kills, and a penalty kill that has stopped a goal on its last 11 times out on the ice. 11 for 11, the Lightning are in their last 11 penalty kills. And the big reason to do with that is the chemistry of Anthony Cirelli and Brandon Hagel. They both work so well. They're so quick on those, four-man lineups. They're so strong on the penalty kill, and the Lightning still were able to kill 2 penalties without Cirelli and Hagel. That is a big deal, and that is how I think Hagel has already stepped up. Even after in the win against Vancouver, when Cirelli left the game early, Hagel's contributions didn't show up on the stat sheet, but he was still getting in front of the net and screening the goalie. He was still, just being disruptive on offense, moving without the puck, getting himself open, and passing the puck and opening up opportunities for his teammates. He's still doing the little things, and I'm not saying that Hagel's under the most pressure from this Cirelli injury, I think, because he needs to step up. I think it's just because he plays so well with Cirelli. I said, that one of the reasons Cirelli, I believe, was picked for the Four Nations face-off in February was because Hagel was. Hagel was a no-brainer. He's been playing so well this season that he had to be considered among the best players in Canada, which he is now. And that was him picked for the Four Nations face-off. Cirelli might have been a little less on the radar than Hagel was, as strong as he has played this season. But I think a big bonus for him just came with his chemistry with Hagel. And them playing so well together means when Cirelli's off the ice, Hagel is going to be the guy who faces more pressure, who's got to do a little bit more to make up for that lost player. And I think Hagel is absolutely up to the task. I fully expect some more big games from him as long as Cirelli is out, even if Hagel has not recorded a point in each of the last 2 games for the Lightning. And, offensively, defensively, whether he's put with different people on the penalty kill, I mean, it's just Hagel being, without his partner in crime just puts a little bit more pressure on him. And I think that's pressure that he can live up to, and we'll definitely see it, I think, against Calgary now that the Lightning have a couple of games without 2 of their key players under their belts. So Darren Radish and Anthony Cirelli are 2 guys that we might talk about a bit more in tomorrow's episode as the Lightning get ready to play the Calgary Flames. But Radish and Hagel are guys that I think the Lightning have under the most pressure with Cernak and Cirelli's injuries. Hopefully they'll be back for the game tomorrow. We'll have as many updates as we can. Check on our X page at @LO_Lightning. Feel free to give us a like and a follow there. wherever you find your podcasts. Also, make sure to follow, subscribe, and like Locked On Lightning. But that is going to be it for today's show. So I'm Josh Sperber, thanking all of you for making Locked On Lightning your first listen today. Now for your second listen, make sure to check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And again, make sure to give us a like, a follow, and a subscription. And thank you again for tuning in to Locked On Lightning. Josh Sperber signing off, and go Bolts. We'll see you tomorrow.